Growing up, I considered myself pretty lucky. My grandparents lived next door, and they owned a farm. My mom helped them run their farm, which meant I spent my days following them around, learning many lessons. I learned that if someone needed help, you dropped what you were doing and you helped them because God was using you. I learned that sacrifices made were not sacrifices, but showing obedience to God. I learned that when my grandparents' garden produced way more food than they needed, it was not luck. It was God placing extra food for them to give away to someone who did need it. I learned that I should never seek the praise of man, but instead do these things in secret where only God the Father knows. God gives us His greatest commandment, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. God also instructs us to love thy neighbor as thyself. So what do these two verses truly mean? Well, they mean exactly what they say. And Jesus gives us the perfect explanation when He explains it to a certain lawyer who is trying to challenge Him by asking what neighbor He is referring to. Jesus begins to tell the lawyer a parable about a good Samaritan. A Jewish priest and a Levite, whom both hold respected religious positions, chose to ignore a severely injured man on the road. These two men at separate times went way out of their way to avoid close contact with the injured man. This man was so injured he was nearly dead. Along came a Samaritan man. Now, the Jews despised the Samaritans. They despised them to the point they would walk way out of their way just to avoid walking on Samaritan soil. When the Samaritan man came upon the severely injured man, he immediately poured oil and wine on his wounds and started to bandage him up. He then picked up the man and placed him on his beast and took him to an inn where he continued to care for him. Luke 10:35 tells us the Samaritan gave the host 2 pence and said, "Take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay thee." I think this parable clearly shows that loving thy neighbor is loving more than just the person next door. It shows us we should love the person we pass at the grocery store, love the man sitting on the side of the road, holding a sign, asking for help. God loves him too, so why not stop and help him and show him God's love? We are the hands and feet of God, and the way we love God is by demonstrating love for others, all others. As Christians and as a follower of Jesus, our hearts should pump compassion towards others. Loving your neighbor is not a box you check on a spiritual checklist. It is a limitless habit of seeing and meeting the needs of others. Too often, many of us worry only about ourselves. If you do this, you will miss what God called you to do. God does not need you to do His work. So when you choose to turn a blind eye, remember, the true worship of God involves taking care of the poor and the helpless and loving others. Jesus said, "Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me."